Hey boys and girls, we are ready for chapter 11 and I just looked back at chapter 10 and this is where Ethan and Bailey were by themselves and at their grandparents' farm, and they heard some weird noises. So here we go, chapter 11. Holding Grandpa's rifle in his trembling hands, the boy crept up the stairs, down the hall and into Mom's bedroom. I was right on his heels. Ethan checked her bathroom and under the bed, and he whipped the closet door open and yelled, "Ha!" scaring me half to death. We repeated this examination in the boys' room, Grandpa and Grandma's room, and the small room with the couch where Grandma slept when Grandpa made his loud rumbling noises at night. Before leaving on the car ride, Grandma had been in this room doing more work on the flip, trying to fix it at Ethan's direction, and it was called the sewing room. The boy checked the whole house, Grandpa's gun out in front of him, and he rattled every knob and tested every window, passing through the living room. I walked hopefully over to Grandpa's chair, but the boy still wanted to explore the house. So with a weary sigh, I accompanied him on a check of the shower curtains. Finally, he returned to Mom's room. He worked the doorknob and then dragged her dresser over in front of the door. He set the rifle down next to the bed and called me up to lie with him. When he clung to me, I was reminded how he sometimes came out to the doghouse in the garage when Mom and Dad were shouting. He felt full of the same lonely terror. I licked him as comfortably as I knew how. We were together. How could anything be wrong? The next morning, we slept in and then had a fabulous breakfast. I ate toast crust and scrambled eggs and finished his milk for him. What a great day. Ethan put more food in a bag along with a bottle that he filled with water and slid the whole thing in his backpack. We were going for a walk. Sometimes Ethan and I would go for a walk and he'd take sandwiches for us to share. Lately, his walks always seemed to take us down by where the girl lived. I could smell her scent on the mailbox. The boy would stand and look at the house, and then we'd turn around and go back home. The fear from the night before was totally gone. Whistling, the boy went out to take care of Flair, who wandered over to eat the bucket of dry, tasteless seeds, or whatever they were that she munched on when she wasn't trying to make herself sick with grass. I was surprised, though, when the boy fetched a blanket and a shiny leather saddle from the barn and affixed them to the horse's back. We'd done this a few times before, with Ethan climbing up to sit high on Flair's back, but always with Grandpa there and always with the gate to Flair's yard firmly closed. Now, though, the boy opened the gate, hoisting himself up with a grin. "Let's go, Bailey," he called down to me. I followed, feeling surly. I didn't like that Flair suddenly was getting all the attention and that I was so far away from the boy, forced to walk beside the huge creature, who I had come to conclude was just as dumb as the ducks. I especially didn't appreciate it when, with a flick of her tail, Flair dropped a smelly pile of poo on the road, narrowly missing me. I lifted my leg on it because it now, after all, belonged to me. But I felt fairly certain the horse had meant the thing as an insult. Soon we were off-road, in the woods, walking along a trail. I chased down a rabbit and would have caught it if it hadn't cheated by suddenly changing directions. I smelled more than one skunk and haughtily refused to take even a single step in that direction. We stopped at a small pond and Flair and I drank, and later the boy ate a sandwich, tossing me the crusts. "Isn't this great, Bailey? Are you having a good time?" I watched his hands, wondering if his questioning tone indicated he was going to feed me some more sandwich. Aside from the fact that we had Flair with us, I was really enjoying myself. Of course, just getting away from the stupid flip was reason in and of itself to celebrate. But after several hours, we were so far from home I could no longer smell any sign of it. I could tell that Flair was getting weary, but from the boy's attitude, I concluded we still had a way to go to reach our destination. At one point, Ethan said, "Do we go this way or that? Do you remember, Bailey? Do you know where we are?" I looked up at him expectantly, and after a moment, we continued on, picking up a trail that had many, many animal scents on it. I marked so much territory my leg was sore from being lifted into the air. Flair stopped and let loose with a huge gush of urine, which I felt was entirely inappropriate behavior since her scent would obliterate mine, and I was the dog. I wandered up ahead to clear the smell from my nose. I topped a small rise, and that's when I saw the snake. It was coiled in a patch of sand, sticking its tongue out rhythmically, and I stopped dead, fascinated. I'd never seen one before. I barked, which caused no reaction whatsoever. I trotted back to the boy, who had Flair underway again. "What is it, Bailey? What did you see?" I decided that whatever the boy was saying, it wasn't go bite the snake. I slid in next to Flare, who was plodding along expressionlessly, and wondered how she would react when she saw the snake curled up in front of her. At first, she didn't see it, but then, as she approached, the snake suddenly pulled back, lifting its head, and that's when Flare screamed. Her front legs came off the ground, and she spun, kicking, and the boy went flying off her back. I ran to him at once, of course, but he was okay. He jumped to his feet. "Flare!" he shouted. I watched sourly as the horse retreated at a full gallop, her hooves pounding the dirt. When the boy took off running, I understood what was needed and ran ahead in hot pursuit. But the horse kept going, and soon the gap between me and my boy was too great, and I turned back to be with him. "Oh no," the boy was saying, but the no wasn't for me. "Oh God, what are we gonna do, Bailey?" To my utter dismay, the boy started crying. He did this less and less as he'd gotten older, which made it all the more upsetting now. I could feel his utter despair, and I shoved my face into his hands, trying to comfort him. The best thing, I decided, would be for us to go home and eat more chicken. The boy eventually stopped crying, looking blankly around the woods. "We're lost, Bailey." He took a drink of water. "Well, okay, come on." Apparently the walk wasn't over because we set out in an entirely new direction, not at all the way from which we had come. We went a long way into the woods, at one point crossing our own scent, and still the boy plodded on. I grew so weary that when a squirrel darted out right in front of me, I didn't even bother to chase it. I just followed the boy, who I could tell was also getting tired. When the light began to fade from the sky, we sat down on a log and we ate the last of the sandwiches, carefully feeding me a hunk. "I'm really sorry, Bailey." Just before dark, the boy became interested in sticks. He began dragging sticks over to a tree that had blown over, stacking them up against the wall of mud and gnarly roots. He piled pine needles on the ground underneath his canopy and stacked more sticks on top. I watched curiously, ready, despite my fatigue, to chase one if he threw it, but he just stayed focused on his task. When it became too dark to see, he climbed in on the pine needles. "Here, Bailey, come here." I crawled in beside him. It reminded me of the doghouse. I ruefully remembered Grandpa's chair, wondering why we just couldn't go home and sleep there. But the boy soon started to shiver, and I put my head on top of him and eased my belly onto his back the way I used to lie on my brothers and sisters when we were cold. "Good dog, Bailey," he told me. Soon his breathing became deep and he stopped shivering. Though I wasn't exactly perfectly comfortable, I carefully lay in a position to keep him warm as possible through the night. We were up when the birds started to call, and before it was even fully light, we were already walking again. I sniffed hopefully at the sack, fooled by the smells, but when the boy let me put my head inside and I found nothing to eat. "We'll save it in case we need to make a fire," he told me. I translated this to mean, "We need more sandwiches," and thumped my tail in agreement. The nature of our adventure changed that day. The hunger in my belly grew to be a sharp pain, and the boy cried again, sniffling for about an hour. I could feel anxiety wafting through him, followed by a sullen, lethargic apathy that I found just as alarming. When he sat down and stared at it with me glassy eyes, I licked him full in the face. I was worried about my boy. We needed to go home now. We came to a small stream, and the boy flopped down on his stomach, and we drank thirstily. The water gave the boy both energy and purpose, and we set off again. We were following the stream, which twisted and turned through the trees, and at one point through a meadow full of singing bugs. The boy turned his face to the sun and increased his pace, hope surging through him, but his soldiers slumped when, after an hour or so, the stream re-entered the dark woods. We spent that night clinging to each other as before. I smelled a carcass nearby, something old but probably edible, but I didn't leave the boy. He needed my warmth more than ever. His strength was leaving him. I could feel it ebbing away. I had never been so afraid. The next day, the boy stumbled a few times while he walked. I smelled blood. His face had been whipped by a branch. I sniffed at it. "Go away, Bailey," he yelled at me. I felt anger and fear and pain coming from him, but I didn't back away. I stayed right there and knew I had done the right thing when he buried his face in my neck and cried some more. "We're lost, Bailey. I'm so sorry," the boy whispered. I wagged at my name. The little stream wandered into a boggy area, losing all definition and making for mucky travels. The boy sank up to his calves so that his feet made a sucking sound as he pulled them out. Bugs descended on us, landing in our eyes and ears. Midway across the swamp, the boy just stopped, his shoulders sagged, his chin dropping. The air left his lungs in a deep, long sigh. Distressed, I picked my way across the slimy area as quickly as I could, putting a paw on his leg. He was giving up. An overwhelming sense of defeat was building within him, and he was surrendering to it. He was losing his very will to live. He was like my brother Hungry, lying down the last time in the culvert, never to get up again. I barked, startling both the boy and me. His dull eyes blinked at me. I barked again. "Okay," he muttered. Lethargically, he drew his foot out of the mud and tentatively set it down, sinking again. It took us more than half the day to cross that swamp. When we picked up the stream on the other side of the bog, it moved water with more purpose, becoming deeper and faster. Soon another trickle joined it, and then another, so that the boy had to make a running start to leap across it when a downed tree blocked his path on one side or another. Each leap seemed to make him tired, and we wound up taking a nap for a few hours. I lay with him, terrified the boy wouldn't wake up, but he did, rousing himself slowly. "You're a good dog, Bailey," he told me, his voice hoarse. It was late in the afternoon when the stream joined a river, and the boy stood and looked blankly at the dark water for a long time, then aimed us downstream, pushing through grasses and thickly choked trees. Night was just starting to fall when I picked up the scent of men. At this point, Ethan seemed to be walking without purpose, his feet scuffling numbly in the dirt. Each time he fell, he took longer and longer to get back up, and he registered nothing when I darted ahead, my nose to the ground. "Come on, Bailey," he mumbled. "Where are you going?" I think he didn't even notice when we crossed the footpath. He was squinting in the fading light, trying to keep from tripping, and I sensed nothing from him for several seconds when the grasses underfoot became a well-trod trail of dirt. I could smell several different men, all of them old scents, but as clear to me as the track of children up and down the streets back home. Then suddenly the boy straightened, taking in a breath. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey," he said softly, his gaze sharpening on the path. Now that I had a firm sense of where we were going, I trotted on ahead a few yards, my fatigue lifting from the boy's rising excitement. Both the trail and the river were bending in parallel to the right, and I kept my nose down, noticing how the man smell was becoming both more strong and more recent. Someone had been here not long ago. Ethan stopped, so I went back to him. He was standing, staring, his mouth open. "Wow," he said. I realized there was a bridge across the river, and as I watched, a figure broke out of the gloom and walked along the railing, peering at the water. Ethan's heart rate ticked up. I could hear it. His excitement, though, faded into a fear, and he shrank back, reminding me of the first mother's reaction when we would come across men while we were hunting. "Bailey, be quiet," he whispered. I didn't know what was going on, but I sensed his mood. It was the same thing that had happened at home the night he got the gun out and poked into all the closets. I looked at him alertly. "Hey," the man on the bridge called. I felt the boy stiffen, getting ready to run. "Hey," the man shouted again. "Are you Ethan?"